Hello and welcome to Fur, Fins, and Feathers. Before we start, I would like to thank everybody who has been very generous in lavishing their support for the program, and we have several new readers throughout Southern New England, readers and listeners throughout Southern New England, and I'd like to welcome you to the show. Today, my guest is Richard Rego, who is well known as a ardent animal supporter and a very fascinating young man who has a great deal of wealth of information to share with us today. Welcome, Rich. It's good to see you again.
Likewise, I take back the young man statement. That went out the window a long time ago.
Nonetheless, it's good to see you.
Yes, we've done a lot of work together.
How did you get interested in animals?
I just always had an interest ever since I was young. You know, always had an interest in science and animals, and it's once you have it, you always have it. It's something that you don't. It's like people that own a dog. You know, you own a dog as a kid, and you might go away to school or get a job, and life changes, and then you always come back to getting another dog. You know, it's always in you. Once it's in you, it's in you.
You have been very interested in animals since your days at Bristol Aggie. Can you tell us about Bristol Aggie?
Yeah, I went to Bristol Aggie, graduated there in 1988. My major was poultry science, which is no longer a major at the school. However, when I did graduate, I did work in the poultry industry for quite a while, for many years, for a couple of genetic research companies out of Connecticut. And then, most of, you know me from working at the fire department. That's my full-time job. But I've always had science-y kind of part-time jobs and gigs, if you could call them, in addition to being at the fire department.
And your son goes to Bristol Aggie now?
Yeah, he does. Yeah, his major is natural resources management.
Very, very good.
Mm-hmm. Working with turtles.
Yes, I believe I wrote a story about the turtle program.
You
did.
You did.
Yeah,
yes.
very fascinating school.
Mm-hmm. It is. A lot of good things coming down the road for the school.
So tell us about your interest in freshwater fish.
Well, as far as I can remember, I always had an aquarium, whether it was something small with local fish that I, caught down the street or down, I lived near the Lee River. I grew up near the Lee River, and,
yes.
It was common practice back then without the internet and all the other distractions we have today, the after school and head down to the river with a dip net and dip around and catch things and, catch minnows and so on. And at that point, all we knew was we were catching fish. We didn't know what we were catching. You bring them back and you put them in some water and, make up some, bring some salt water back because, the river was salt water, and you keep them for a while and then you would let them go, or they would all die because you didn't know what you were doing. And then, you learn from there, and then you expand. And, got to the point, well, I'm catching these fish. Well, what are they? And then you buy a book and you're looking them up and you're identifying them. And, back then, again, it wasn't as easy now as just taking a picture and putting it out on, the computer or looking it up. You had to get a book and look through the book and, and look at pictures and, and it got really technical, counting scales and all those other things to try to figure out what you had, and that's probably what really kind of lured me into the science end of it, of keeping fish.
So you, tell me about your collections, your fish collections.
Well, recently I've way downsized. I only have a couple small aquariums now, but in the past I've had as many as 200 aquariums, and you'd come by. You had been by before and did a story,
yes,
and
I did.
You saw the fish room. And again, it's the aquarium hobby it's a great hobby because it's the type of hobby that you can invest as little or as much as you want into it. If you enjoy having a fish tank in the living room or in the bedroom, you can spend a short amount of money, get a small fish tank set up, keep some very common, easily kept fish, and enjoy that. Or you can get really sucked into it, like a lot of people do, what we call the hardcore hobbyists that want to breed fish. So not just have them as the pet and for entertainment, but to breed them and maybe trade them off with other hobbyists to get other types of fish to breed. You step up a little bit further and go from 1 tank to 2 tanks to 10 tanks to 200 tanks, and then it becomes a hobby. And every hobby has its its very easy end and the out of control end of it. You can collect something and just have a few of something, or you can collect something and want everything, like baseball cards or what have you. But I think what's nice about it is it's a inexpensive hobby, especially nowadays where there are so many self-contained type systems that are available now, where you can buy a be-all, end-all tank and a kit where you basically just add water and then add fish. The filtration is built in, lighting is built in, the heating is built in, so there's no having to tinker around with buying a heater and buying a special filter and this and that, and everything is self-contained into a small unit that could be anywhere from a gallon to 5 gallons to 10 gallons. So that's made it a lot easier for the person wanting to, keep fish with a small investment, because you're getting everything in one price. So that's, in the last few years, what we call nano tanks, or small tanks, have become very, very popular because of the ease of taking care of them, the small amount of space they require. And fish and ice, you can go off for the day and don't have to worry about somebody coming to let the dog out. You can go on vacation and they can go for a few days without eating. So it's an easy pet to have. Again, relatively inexpensive, but again, like anything else, you could spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on a fish. Just like any hobby, or you could spend just a small amount of money. So.
Sounds like it would be a nice hobby for a young person.
It is. It's, I've been involved in aquarium societies for many years, and your next door neighbor, Roger Ponce, was, a good friend of mine who also breeds tropical fish, former principal at the Gardner School and a teacher here at the high school. And, we've both been involved in aquarium hobby for a long time, as well as Tropical Fish Society. But one thing we have a big lack of is youngsters in the hobby. And
why is that?
Well, there's a lot of other distractions. There's a lot of other things. And it's not that we have a problem with we see, middle-aged people coming into the hobby. I say middle age, maybe, late 20s, early 30s, but we don't see teenagers. We don't see the really young kids coming into the hobby. And I think there's, again, there's lots, there's probably a million reasons for that, and we can sit and talk about that for a week and never come up with an answer. But, I think as you get older, you'll probably be able to realize that you can put more time and effort into taking care of something, whereas a kid, it might be a little bit more of an impulse thing. I want a fish, I want this, I want that, and then you get them and then take care of them.
And leave it for dad or mom to take care of.
Which is how a lot of hobbyists that I know across the aquarium circuit started. They bought a tank for their kid, the kid lost interest, the mom or the dad ended up taking care of the fish, got really into it, got another tank, and before you know it, they became, they're breeding fish and so on. And a lot of people have started off that way. They got a fish tank as a gift for Christmas or birthday, or like I said, their child had a tank and they lost interest in it and they kind of took it over. A lot of college kids, living on campus or in college dorms, have a very limited amount of pets they can keep. They can't have dogs, they can't have cats, but most of them will allow them to keep a small fish tank, 10 gallons or smaller. So a lot of hobbyists get their start because in college, in their dorm room, they can have a fish tank, and those pet stores that are located in those college areas do very well because of that. One that comes to mind is the Aqualife Aquarium in Providence, which is recently closed because they're moving to a new location. But they were on Wickenden Street in Providence for
I used
years
to go
and
in
years.
there.
Yeah,
I've gone in there many
George
years.
Goulat, a great friend of mine. And Brown University was in his backyard, and a lot of university kids would come in and out, and get their aquariums, and you know them for X number of years, and then they go off and they go back home, they finish their college and so on. But a big part of his customer base was the college kids, being there on the east side of Providence and in the Brown University area.
What would be an example of some good freshwater fish that people could enjoy?
Well, first of all, when you're getting into anything, the first and best thing to do is educate yourself on it.
Of course.
Okay, so don't just jump right into it. The biggest problem with the aquarium hobby, and the reason most people get out of it, is because they get their tank, they buy their fish, everything dies, they don't know what they did, they go get some more, everything dies, and then they get out of the hobby. You can go by almost any yard sale and see a fish tank outside at the yard sale. Because, and most of the time, it was one little or couple little minor things that could have been corrected, that could have made that tank and those fish survive.
Made a difference.
Yes, and a lot of times is they just simply think it's as easy as just putting some water in the tank and then putting the fish. There are a few things that go along with it, but again, educate yourself. Go online, look at some articles, buy some books. I brought some common books that, setting up a freshwater aquarium, just a general book on freshwater aquariums, freshwater aquarium problem solver. So when you have that problem, you go take a quick look through the book and you'll see what I did. What did I do wrong? Why did these fish die? The other problem comes down to compatibility. You go to the pet store, those fish are from all over the world. They don't all live together in harmony like they do in the pet store in the tanks.
Of course.
Some fish are from Africa, some fish are from the Amazon, some fish are from North America, some fish are from South America, and they have all different requirements. And those requirements prove that you can't put them all together in the same tank, and that's the problem. People will buy, ooh, this fish is pretty, this fish is pretty. Yeah, this fish requires really soft acidic water, and this fish requires really hard alkaline water. They're not going to live together. They may live in the tank, but they're not going to thrive. Just kind of mope around till they slowly die because the parameters aren't right. Those people that are in the aquarium hobby tend to keep their tanks in what we call single species tanks, where they're breeding a specific group of fish. So that tank contains one species of fish with all the conditions that are ideal for that fish. The water is acidic, or the water is alkaline. Whatever their parameters are in nature, they're doing in the tank to make sure that they're going to be successful, not only with keeping the fish alive, but breeding them. And once your fish stop breeding, obviously you're doing everything correctly, because obviously the fish are happy in their environment and wanting to continue on. They're not just moping around till they die.
What would be an example of some fish that can thrive together? And not keep a million different types of fish.
Most of the pet stores around, and like anything else, like bookstores, like a lot of things, we've lost a lot of our small mom and pop, aquarium shops over the years. I can remember when I was, younger, you could go into Fall River and there were 3 or 4 or 5 aquarium shops around.
Yeah.
And now we're stuck with the big box stores for the most part. There are a few mom and pop shops left around, but you need to travel, far and wide to get to them. Most of the mom and pop shops carry what we call the bread and butter fishes. The ones that are bred on fish farms in Asia or Florida. Your common things like mollies and guppies and platies and the tetras and so on. Some of those fish are also wild caught and imported into the United States for the aquarium hobby. And most of those fish will do well in the aquariums, because those big box stores are not carrying typically the hard to maintain specialty fishes. Now if your hobby expands, so you start off with that small tank and you go to the big box store and you get a tank full of live bearers, so guppies and mollies and platies, they're going to do well. You keep the tank at 78 degrees and you give them a regular over-the-counter fish food, nothing fancy, and they'll do well. They may even breed for you in that tank. But then you want to expand that a little bit more. Maybe, I like these guppies, I want to breed them. So you go and you buy more. Maybe you buy a book on how to breed guppies. Maybe you join a local guppy society, which there are around here. Or you join the Tropical Fish Society. Then you find out there are fish out there that you'll never ever see in the pet store, that the pet stores don't carry. Then you're going to go to a tropical fish meeting and you're going to join a tropical fish club and you're going to see them come in every month with bags of fish that they bred, and I've never seen this fish before. I like this fish, I want it. And they're going to say, here, take these home. This is how I took care of it. This is how I bred it. Set up your tank this way. And that's how the hobby gets out of control. But most of the pet stores, we hope that the staff is knowledgeable and will steer you in the right direction when you're buying fish. But again, when we lost a lot of those mom and pop shops, we lost the really good hardcore expertise. Sometimes you don't get that with the big box stores. But again, buy some books, join an aquarium society, talk to somebody already in the hobby, and learn, because it's a very easy hobby.
Can you talk about the Tropical Fish Society?
Sure. The Tropical Fish Society of Rhode Island meets in East Providence at the RISPCA Animal Shelter at the end of Amaral Street by the Rumford Aquarium.
Yes.
Yep. So they meet the third Wednesday of each month, and the meetings are free and open to the public. Anybody can attend. You can join and be a member. When you join, that gives you extra things like being able to vote on offices, getting a newsletter, so on. But anybody can go to a meeting anytime they want. Each month's meeting typically features a speaker who's speaking on a specific topic. Last month we had a gentleman who spoke on a very specific group of African fishes called climbing perches, African climbing perches. Very few have ever been bred in captivity by anyone, even academia, but this guy has bred many of them. He worked with them for years, and very interesting program. Next month, we actually meet next Wednesday. We've moved the meeting up 1 week because of the holiday, but we have a speaker coming in from Connecticut. She'll be speaking on rare and endangered fishes that are in the hobby, that people are maintaining, that might be endangered in their native habitat, but being kept alive in the hobby through aquarium hobbyists. So again, they meet, third Wednesday of each month, year-round. There are lots of aquarium organizations in the Northeast. The Boston Aquarium Society meets at the New England Aquarium third Monday of each month, same week we meet. There's a couple of guppy societies around, New England Fancy Guppy Association, and they meet, I believe they rotate around to different areas they meet at. And the Northeast in general is very thick with aquarium societies compared to the rest of the United States. The Northeast Council of Aquarium Societies, which is based in Connecticut, is the umbrella organization for almost all the aquarium societies in the Northeast and even further down into Washington, D.C. So every year they hold a convention in March in Connecticut, and that convention brings all the hobbyists together in the Northeast and beyond to listen to 3 days of speakers, and vendors come in. There's a vendor room, there's a big giant tropical fish auction that goes on, and that is a great thing to attend because you're really sitting with the experts. The authors of these books will be there, speaking on a specific topic, whether it's how to breed a certain type of fish, or maybe it was somebody who went on a collecting trip to Thailand to collect fishes, or the Amazon, and they're going to do a talk on that. And those are the same things we have at our local, aquarium club in Rhode Island. We have a gentleman who comes in at least once a year who travels around the world collecting fishes. He'll come in and do a talk on, when he went to Ecuador, or when he went to, Peru or something like that. Really fascinating.
Have you ever traveled abroad?
No, not to collect fishes.
Not to collect
No, I've
fishes.
done a lot of collecting in the southeastern part of the United States, mid-Atlantic states, because I was, really into native fish as well. So I've done a lot of collecting through Florida, into the Florida Keys, the Carolinas. But, as far as the Amazon or, Peru, I haven't been there. It's a lot cheaper just to buy them here.
What would you suggest for someone as a starter, to start, in the hobby as a gift, to start?
Well, I would say start off with one of those self-contained type aquariums. They're very
Okay.
common now. You can get them in any of the pet stores, sell them. Again, the big box pet stores have them as well. Hagen, Ralph Hagen is a aquarium equipment manufacturer. They have a nice line of fluval aquariums that are what they call those nano aquariums that have the filtration built in. It's basically two plugs, one for the light, one for the filter, and then you set it up. A few days. There's directions in there and what to do, and you're talking price range anywhere from maybe $40 on up to $100+ depending on the size and the fanciness of the one that you want. But they're nice. They're small. You can sit them on a counter. They don't need a special stand. They're not very heavy. And then at that point, then you can go to the pet store and start with a couple of fish. Don't go out and get 50 fish right off the bat. Get one or two, put them in there, see how they do. They do well, add a few more in there. We always had this kind of a rule of 1 inch of fish per gallon. So, if you have a 5-gallon tank, you wouldn't want more than 5 inches of fish. Now, you wouldn't want to put a 5-inch fish in a 5-gallon tank. That's too big. The fish is too big. They need a lot more room than that. But it's better to have a larger tank with less fish than too many fish in
Start with
tank.
a book.
Yes, pick up a book, very basic book. If you can't find one at the local pet store, go online and find one. Go to the library. Library should have some very basic books on the aquarium hobby. They're not going to have, I have aquarium books that I've spent hundreds of dollars on just a specific type of fish, thick, but basic books like this, most of the pet stores are going to carry them.
And a magazine or two.
Yep. Newsbreak right here in Swansea carries 3 or 4 aquarium magazines. Pick one of those up, that's their monthly publications. And a lot of times they won't tend to necessarily have the articles on the very basics of the aquarium hobby. They might have a feature article on a specific species of fish, or maybe one of those collecting trips or something like that. But in those magazines is where you're going to find the listings for the aquarium societies, for websites, for things where you can go and get information on expanding your hobby or getting a little bit more into it. But I would really recommend, especially for the people in the listening area here, is the Tropical Fish Society of Rhode Island. It's right down the street. It's free to attend. And that is a group of people that are dedicated aquarists. They've been in the hobby for years and years and years. You're going to get expert advice for free. You know, and any questions that you have, you know, they're going to be happy to answer the questions for you. It's a great outlet to obtain fish, to obtain plants for your...
Probably a very good place to find a mentor too.
Exactly, exactly. You know, it's funny. I mean, you know, I talk about Raja, you know, who was your neighbor.
Next door neighbor.
Yeah, and when I started teaching fire safety in our elementary schools, I remember walking into his office and he had a big aquarium in his office at Gardner School, and that was the conversation that got us to become friendly with each other and realize that, you know, he was on the Aquarium Society and I joined it, and, you know, we've been, you know, friends ever since in the aquarium hobby, you know, and, you know, as involved with the Tropical Fish Society of Rhode Island. So, but again, great gift for a young child, a nice small fish tank. Again, one of those self-contained units just makes it a lot easier on you as far as setting it up. You don't have to, again, there's no special equipment. Just plug it in, put some water in there, and you know, wait a couple days, and you're ready to add your fish.
Or an interest for someone who is going to be stuck like we all are during the winter.
Well, it's a proven fact that watching aquarium fish will reduce stress levels, will reduce anxiety. It's why you see a lot of them in doctors' offices and hospitals.
And there is a growing number of them. I went to the doctor a couple of times this week, and they both had very nice, professionally put together.
Yeah, aquariums. Yeah, and
Aquariums.
you'll see them in doctors' offices. Again, for that one reason, it's a soothing kind of watching the fish instead of watching the TV and everything that's going on in the world. Watch the fish. You know, watch them back and forth. Watch
Very
their
relaxing,
interactions.
very
It is
soothing.
It is, and again, you don't have to have a big, you know, very expensively maintained aquarium in your house. That little 2.5 gallon one on your, you know, on your dresser in your bedroom with the lights off and watching the fish go back and forth is enough to kind of, you know, soothe you out for a little while.
What are some of the other fascinating topics that you can share with us? You do a lot with other animals as well.
I do, yeah. I do a lot with reptiles and amphibians. I work as a contract biologist, mainly the last few years, working mainly with salamanders in Massachusetts and turtles.
Talk about your work with turtles. I love turtles.
Turtles are great. Who doesn't like turtles? So most of the turtle work I do with turtles is with box turtles. And so the work that I do with them is related to, I work for an environmental company that will go in ahead of construction projects typically, and we'll scan for turtles in the construction zone. We'll find the turtles that are in that specific area. We'll tag them, we'll mark them. So that will let those companies know at what time of the year those turtles will be nesting so they can avoid construction during that time. It may result in protecting nests while construction is going on, removing the turtles from the site, and then putting them back there once construction is done. So that's a lot of the work that I do with them. Not strictly hardcore research like I've done with salamanders, but that's more of mitigation work. But again, we do put radios on them so we can track them and then, you know, start a life history on them. Interestingly, this year we caught a female box turtle nesting in Bristol County. She was nesting and we estimated her at 80 years old. So 80 years old, still out laying eggs and going to pond. I'd say if turtles weren't hit by cars or run over by lawnmowers or what have you, they'd probably live forever. They're just amazing.
And they're
amazing.
very, very beautiful.
They are, they're beautiful. However, nearly all of our native reptiles and amphibians do not make good pets. You know, a lot of them are protected, various levels of protection, including box turtles, so you can't legally keep them. But they have very specific requirements, especially when it comes to diet, temperature, and so on, which it gets very expensive and hard to reproduce in captivity. Again, you know, the reptile hobby is another hobby that I've been involved with in the past, and again, we've written articles on that in the past. But again, there are local, you know, reptile societies you could join if you wanted to get into that aspect of the hobby and learn the right way to do it.
What about other animals? What are some of your other interests?
So again, the salamander work is interesting. We do that typically in the spring during vernal pool season, Once I worked with one very specific species of salamander, the blue-spotted salamander, which is a species of special concern in Massachusetts. The last few years I've been working with Mass Fish and Wildlife on a genetic project. Those salamanders in most parts of their range have hybridized with another species of salamander and are no longer genetically pure. However, there are several populations in Massachusetts that are still genetically pure, and those are the ones that we're working with, trying to kind of figure out where they occur and where that break is between where they've hybridized with other salamanders. So that's some of the work I've done with salamanders recently, also some work with marbled salamanders, which is another species of salamander that breeds now in the fall. All of our other salamanders typically breed in the spring, but the one that breeds in the fall is now, and that's a marbled salamander, which is also another protected species in Massachusetts. So
That's very fascinating.
it is. You know, the fire department's my 40-hour-a-week job, but the rest of the hours are spent in science.
That is very, very interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's fun. It's fun getting out there. In fact, just today I was out this morning. You know, like I woke up, it's beautiful. I threw a pair, as long as it's above freezing, I put shorts on, and you know, I took a sweatshirt out, and you know, I took a walk out, you know, behind the junior high school out in Village Park. And, you know, poked around, saw a couple of garter snakes and a few salamanders. Still, you know, a couple turtles still getting that last little bit of sun. You know, before.
Are there a lot of turtles out there?
There's a lot of turtles out in, you know, Lewin Brook there, out back there. Those common turtles, you know, the painted turtles, which are very common, snapping turtles, musk turtles. Very few box turtles left around. I've not found a box turtle in Swansea in many years, and I spend a lot of time out there. They're out there. People, you know, will send me pictures of them and so on, but you know, I don't come across them very often. Some areas that projects I work on, I find many of them, you know, but we typically keep most of those research sites quiet, so that nobody knows exactly where we're working, because there's always a fear of, you know, people going to collect them. There is a very deep black market in the reptile trade.
Is there really?
Especially for North American turtles, yes.
Why is that?
You know, again, it's like anything else. When things become harder to get, more people want them. So, you know, when things become scarce or when things become protected, you know, the price goes up on those things. And
It's
as
like
a
the black market.
Exactly, there's a very large black market in the reptile industry in the United States. And not as much in the aquarium hobby, but there is an underground market in the aquarium hobby as well for a certain species of fish.
Well, I thank you. Rich Rego, was a fascinating afternoon. It's always great to see you.
Yeah,
we'll
you too,
have to
Brian.
have you come back.
Sure.
And thank you very much. And if I don't see people over the Thanksgiving holidays, I hope you have a wonderful holiday. Thank you very much, and take care. Bye-bye.